Selamat siang semuanya, teman-teman. Setelah menyantap hidangan yang saya rasa lezat sekali siang ini ya, kita kembali mendengarkan ini semacam mungkin paparan singkat dari Pak John Riady, salah satu moderator dari Can 21. Nah, ini kali ini yang akan ditekankan adalah soal entrepreneur dan juga inovasi serta pendidikan. Seperti apa pentingnya, dan kemudian kita akan melihat apakah pendidikan bisa menjadi solusi untuk perbaikan dari permasalahan-permasalahan yang dihadapi oleh bangsa selama ini. Untuk menghemat waktu, saya persilakan John yang sedang minum. Silakan.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. Saya tiba kemarin malam, saya sudah mendengar begitu banyak ide-ide yang brilian ya. It's really a humbling experience to be here with you. I think I'm learning so much from you. I'm not so sure there's much that I can share with you, but I want to try. Banyak orang yang mengatakan, atau banyak orang yang tertawa kalau kata-kata Indonesia dan entrepreneurship digunakan di dalam kalimat yang sama. Banyak orang yang mengira kalau kata-kata Indonesia dan innovation adalah sebuah oksimoron. I'm not so sure I agree. I think Indonesia has a very strong history of innovation and entrepreneurship. Saya kasih beberapa contoh ya. Tahun 2007, pemerintahan DKI Jakarta mengeluarkan peraturan 3-in-1 yang mengatakan bahwa kalau mobilnya kurang dari 3 orang nggak boleh melalui Jalan Sudirman, Gatot Subroto, dan Tamrin, dan lain sebagainya. Dalam waktu yang begitu singkat, mungkin lebih dari 24 jam ya, Indonesia itu, we managed to organize ourselves and create what is called the jockey system. Now, some of you may laugh, right? But this is entrepreneurship. Saya yakin kalau hukum yang sama itu dilakukan di Singapura atau Jepang atau negara-negara lain, pasti mereka nggak lakukan yang sama. I think they'll be sitting ducks, right, following the little laws, you know, like the Singaporeans and the Japanese that they are. But I think that's not who we are. I think Indonesians, at the heart of it, are very entrepreneurial. Take a look at how we drive. Very entrepreneurial, right? But on a more serious note though, we do have a long history of entrepreneurship. I'll give you a few examples. Tahun 95 ya, kita dulu ada perusahaan PTN kan ya, we create planes. We created a plane, the M250 ya, diketahui sebagai Gatot kaca ya, pesawat Gatot kaca itu. That was fully designed and manufactured and patented in Indonesia. It's called M250 because the M stood for Nusantara. The planes before that was KN, which stood for Casa Nusantara. That was Casa is a plane company in Spain. Jadi dulu itu kan kita di PTN itu partner JV dengan Casa ya. Tapi setelah itu kita bisa maju dari JV menjadi perusahaan yang mendesain, mempatenkan, manufaktur dan menjual pesawat sendiri. So we do have a history. If we take a look at more recently ya, mungkin kalian baca di koran ada LIPI ya, Lembaga Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia, mereka menciptakan suatu mobil yang dinamakan, saya nyontek sedikit ya, mobil Marlip, singkatan dari Marmut Listrik, LIPI. Nah, this is a battery fueled car. Now, what are the challenges? There's two biggest challenges with battery cars today. The first is that it takes too long to charge, and when you charge it, it doesn't last long enough, right? This mobil Marlip ini berhasil untuk achieve the shortest charging time. You know, that's I think quite an achievement. It solved one of the major issues of battery cars and maybe our world's ability to be able to move to a more sustainable world in terms of energy. Another example, many of you may know a gentleman by the name of Sehat Sutarja. Sehat Sutarja was a gentleman, Indonesian, that grew up with very simple means. Dia besar di Pasar Baru. Dia pergi ke mendapat sertifikat dari sekolah listrik di Pasar Baru. Today, he is the founder of a company that has a market cap of over $9 billion in Silicon Valley. It sells over 1 billion chips every year. The first iPhone, you know, the Wi-Fi chip in the iPhone, that's his company who supplied it. You guys may know the Audi cars, right? All the 2010 models, all the Wi-Fi chips in those cars, also his company. So this is an example of a guy who started from nothing in Pasar Baru, who has a certificate not from some of the fancy schools that you guys here went to, not from Harvard. Not as fancy as ours. But he made it. And he made it through what was called basically entrepreneurialism. It was innovation. He worked hard year after year. And his company does now over $3 to $4 billion a year in revenues. If that were a company in Indonesia, that would be one of the largest companies on a stock market. I think Telkom is about a $14 billion company, right? His company is about $9 billion, and that's after the correction. So we do have a long history of entrepreneurship. But I think we also cannot deny that we have some other facts that we have to face. Expenditure on R&D, pengeluaran untuk R&D sebagai porsi dari our national income ya, this year was only 0.1%. Over the years, it has never gone beyond 0.2. Compare this, for example, to Korea, that is 2.7%, Singapore 2.3%, India 1%, even Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, semua di atas kita. Kita cuma 0,1% dari pendapatan negara kita. Very low. Dan dari semua pengeluaran ini, hampir 90% itu dari government ya, so it's public R&D. But where is the private R&D? If you look at India, Korea, all these major countries, sebagian besar dari pengeluaran ini adalah semua pengeluaran private sector. It is a private sector who spends, who does R&D. Of course, the government may give matching grants, it may stimulate, it may facilitate it, but it's mostly done by the private sector. We don't see that in Indonesia. Another fact, right? The number of patent filings. The number of patent filings in Indonesia is very low. The number of patents granted, so you apply for a patent and the ones granted are even lower. So in 2009, there were only 13 patents granted in Indonesia. 13 ya, 13 ya. Ini dibandingkan dengan Jepang, this will blow your mind, right? 217,000 compared to our 13. Korea did 100,000. Even Malaysia did 147. And Singapore did 647. So I think for a country as big as ours, there should be no reason why we're only at 13, right? So you have the application of filings, you have the granting of filings, and then you have the commercialization. And that's important because if you only invent something but you don't commercialize it, how can society benefit? So this figure is also important, and even on this figure, we're even lower. I mean, if you given only 13 patents granted, how many of them are commercialized, right? You can sort of think about themselves. Some other figures that you may find interesting. Only 5% of faculty lecturers at universities have PhDs. That's very low. I think the global average is about 50%. In places in the university, it's about 80 to 85. So I met a few PhDs here. I hope we'll see you back in Jakarta. You can increase this number from 5.5 to 50 to 60 one day. So these are just some of the figures. So this is challenging, but I think we should take a look at this not as a frustration, but as a challenge. If, in spite of all these challenges, we have still done so well, think about what we can do if we get a few more things right. And that's what we're here for today. We're here to discuss what we can do, what could change, how can we change so that our country can become more entrepreneurial, more innovative, and become a better Indonesia for the future. So ultimately, I want to hear from you, but to get the ball rolling, I'd like to suggest maybe 3 factors that affect innovation and entrepreneurship in a country. The first I want to start with is infrastructure, an ecosystem, right? For innovation to happen, you need an infrastructure. The best well-known infrastructure here is, you guys may all know, it's Silicon Valley. Sounds surprising, right? All countries send delegations to Silicon Valley. They try to learn what Silicon Valley is about and try to replicate it back home. In London, there's a place called Silicon, this is pretty funny, Silicon Roundabout. There's another place called Silicon Fen outside of Cambridge. There's one in Dubai too, one in Moscow. But the point is everyone tries to copy it. And Silicon Valley is interesting because I think it applies what people often call the triple helix of innovation, which is a combination of academia, of business, and of business, and of the government. And they feel that with these 3 combinations, innovation can happen, right? Because universities and the research labs are where the research takes place, is where the ideas happen. So you've got the universities, and you've got the businesses because you have to finance them, right? And this is not just any business, not just any money, right? I think investing in venture capital, I met a few of you who are VCs here, you would understand. Investing in VC is not the same as investing in, let's say, private equity. investing in startups requires a very different kind of risk appetite, a very different kind of, how do you value VCs? And a lot of finance majors here, I'm not the lecturer, but the point is, it's a different kind of capital. People call it risk capital. So you need the universities to do the research, you need the businesses to grow it, then you need sort of the mentorship. So a lot of these startups, when they apply for funding, even if I came and said, look, I've got money, I'll fund it, they're like, who are you? They're not just looking for money. Money is almost abundant in today's world because capital is global. You see some of the VCs in Silicon Valley investing in Indonesia. So money is rarely ever the issue. The issue oftentimes is mentorship. So a lot of times the people who sit on the VC boards have themselves started 10, 20, 30 companies. So they can guide you. Like, hey, this is what you do, these are the steps. So that's the thing. So, these are some of the institutions, right? The government incentives, the funding, the entrepreneurs, the universities, and things like this. But I think entrepreneurship requires more than this. And this is why a lot of the companies or the countries who have tried to copy and replicate the Silicon Valley in their country have failed. It's because while they build the institutions, they don't build the culture. And this is what I think entrepreneurship is really about, it's ultimately about, right? It's really a mindset. When we think about entrepreneurship, people think about money, business, starting a business. And that's true, but I think entrepreneurship is more than that. Innovation is a mindset. It's not really how you apply it to a business. It's not creating the next iPhone or the next... Sorry, it's my iPhone. It's not about creating the next iPhone. It's about how you apply that mindset of innovation, of risk-taking, of responding to change, of growth, right, to everything that you do. Whether it be government, whether it be education, whether it be media, whether it be... Sorry,
I'm guessing Steve Jobs is offended.
I think it's your girlfriend, John.
That's funny, I don't have one. I don't know how to turn it off.
On the side.
I'll give it to Peter.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It's also the iPhone. So let's go back. It's not about the institutions, it's about a culture. It's about a mindset, right? And applying that mindset in everything that we do. So for example, how can entrepreneurship be applied in government? One example that comes to mind is when SBY cut oil subsidies in 2005. Now you may ask, how is innovation? Well, it's innovation because I think it fits the characteristics. You have to remember that in 2005, right, oil was, we had budgeted for our budget at $35 a barrel. That's our assumption. I think oil at that point was about 75, if not close to $100 a barrel. So our budget was about to burst, right? But presidents before SBY who tried to cut fuel subsidies have lost popularity and have eventually lost their jobs, right? And many times, I won't name names, but presidents before that said, we're going to cut subsidies, but they announced it about 3 months before they leave office. So they leave the burden on their predecessors, on their successors, right? But SBY did it. It was a risk. He knew it needed to happen, otherwise our budget would fall apart. And he took it. And he was able to explain to the people why this is necessary, why it's not against the poor to cut fuel subsidies. And I think today we are a better country because of it. I think today if we had never cut fuel subsidies, I believe that we would never have received the Moody's and all these credit rating upgrades that we have today. So I think we are in a much more stable macroeconomic fiscal position thanks to some of the policies that were taking place back then. So that's one example of entrepreneurship. So another example is when, how can we apply, for example, entrepreneurship in education? Traditionally, education in Indonesia has been one of the most heavily regulated industries in Indonesia. And I think there are a lot of laws which, quite frankly, I'm not so sure why they're on the books. Things like, why can't a foreign university open a school in Indonesia? Right? Many schools are in Singapore. In fact, that's great. It attracts a lot of people in Singapore because of that. And we lose a lot of our students because they go to Singapore because of that. Hong Kong does it. Korea does it. Why can't we do it? Oftentimes, the reason is so-called nationalism. What does that mean? Right? So those of you who are involved in education, who are in the Ministry of Education, maybe this is something you can do, right? How can we innovate? How can we achieve a breakthrough in education? That's really what entrepreneurship is about. It's about taking risk. It's about responding to change. It's about achieving a breakthrough, wherever you are. So that's my second point. First point, institution. Second point, culture. So the question then becomes, how do we achieve this culture? If culture is necessary to achieve it, how do we get that culture? I think there are a lot of ways to do it. I'd like to suggest one, which is education. I'm a big believer of education, and I think education is probably the single biggest determining factor in determining what we can do in the future. I think we need a system of education that is geared and designed for the kind of country and economy that we want 25 years from today. Let me give you an example. In the US today, the US has to become a services economy, right? It has to and it wants to. It can't compete when it comes to creating low-cost goods with China and India. So it has to be a high value-added society. But while the government believes that, the businesses believe that, the education system is still geared and designed to produce students for the industrial society. So there's a mismatch between the kind of students and the skills that they have when they graduate and what the businesses need. So while there's huge unemployment, there's also some kind of businesses that say we can't find workers. So we want to hire foreign workers. And then the government says you can't hire foreign workers. So they put all sorts of visa restrictions. And this is a challenge because there's a mismatch between what businesses want and what schools are producing. So if we apply this to Indonesia, but looking forward, right? If we want to become an innovative country, if we want to become a country of entrepreneurs and science and all this, is our education system preparing ourselves to do that? Or will 25 years from now, will we wake up and realize that there's a big mismatch between what we want to be and what we are? And I think our education system is not there yet. And that's where we need to move. We need to move, and we need to not only improve on access, but also the quality of it, and also the equity, pemerataan, the akses, kualitas, dan pemerataan. So these three things, it's important. And so this is just some of my thoughts on entrepreneurship. What I think needs to happen: we need to build the institutions. We need to have a culture, and that culture is premised on a strong system of education. So we take a step back and we take a look at all the global challenges that our world faces today. Well, what are some? Right? Global warming, right? Food shortages, democracy, terrorism, all these issues, right? Indonesia has such a critical role to play. We talk about food shortages. We are some of the largest producers of some of these stuff. We talk about the metals and minerals shortages. You kidding me? We produce all kinds of stuff in our soil, right? We talk about democracy and terrorism. We are a country that has proven that it can work. Islam can coexist and is not at odds with democracy. We talk about what other issues? The economy, right? And how do we manage a right fiscal position in this world where all countries are defaulting? We're a country that our debt to GDP ratio is one of the lowest, 25%. That's really, I think, one of the lowest in the world. So we can, I think we have a big role to play. And in many ways, Indonesia is probably the most invisible country in the world. But it doesn't have to be. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the last day here is meeting all of you. Some of you come from academia, finance, VC, lawyers, professors. We really have a cross-section of the entire sort of Indonesian population. So imagine if all of us can take this spirit of entrepreneurialism, this mindset of innovation and achieving breakthroughs and bring it back to our own workplaces, right? I think we can really make Indonesia a better place. And this is not rhetorics. I really think so. I think this event here, organized by Dino and Monica Santor, it's a great event. I think it has a great multiplier effect. We come here for a weekend, we go away, we bring this new mindset, we apply that mindset to everything that we do, and I think Indonesia will have a big impact on the world, on all spheres of our lives. So, with that, I'd like to just end. I'd like to thank Dino, Marosa, Peter Gonta, and the rest of you for this opportunity to share. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your thoughts. Thank you.